and the main purpose of this hearing is, are we doing all that we can to screen and vet visa applicants before they enter the country? And second, how effectively are federal agencies managing their responsibilities and working together, including sharing information, through each step of the visa and immigration process to ensure our security?
Deciding and administering immigration benefits, including visas, is a massive enterprise. USCIS employs about 19,000 people to process millions of applications for immigration benefits. They are required to enforce what are sometimes highly complex laws, regulations, and internal policies, which can be subject to differing interpretations. They are rightly expected to process decisions within a reasonable time frame. USCIS and the rest of DHS accomplish their mission while working in an antiquated system of paper-based files more suited to an office environment from 1950 than 2016. This system creates inefficiencies and risks to the program. To give you an idea of the scope of the problem, USCIS spends more than $300 million per year shipping, storing, and handling over 20 million immigrant files. This week, we published our 6th report on USCIS's efforts to transform its paper-based processes into an integrated and automated system. We undertook this audit to answer a relatively simple question. After 11 years and considerable expense, what has been the outcome of USCIS's efforts to automate benefits processing? We focused on the progress that was made and the performance outcomes. We interviewed dozens of individuals, including traveling to the local field locations and talking to over 60 end users who were using Ellis, and literally stood next to them and watched as they struggled with the system. We found that USCIS has made little progress in transforming its paper-based processes into an automated one. Previous efforts, which cost approximately $500 million to implement, had to be abandoned. That report reflected user dissatisfaction with a system that often took between 100 and 150 mouse clicks to move among sub-levels to complete a specific process. Finally, corrupt and criminal activity on the part of DHS personnel can present a risk to the integrity of the visa process. My written testimony illustrates several examples in which employees or contractors who were in a position of trust were able to compromise the system to provide immigration benefits to those who were not entitled to them.
Describe that. I mean, the first thing you talked about was providing benefits to your customers. So it's, I guess the way I would interpret that is really the first part of your mission is customer service, providing benefits to immigrants to this country. And again, subject to security.
Right, except for, security. Security is subject to, in no small weight to be given to that, to national security and public safety. In other words, our staff clearly understands this is evidenced in the fact that roughly 800, 900 of our staff members are specifically dedicated to fraud, the Fraud Detection National Security Directorate, that if an individual poses a threat, they are denied the benefit, to be very clear about that.
Director Saldana, do you have a relatively simple mission statement for your agency?
Comparable to this committee's, and that is ensure the national security and public safety of our country through the enforcement of immigration and customs laws. Huge, over 400 statutes implicated by that, but we're game.
An internal memo written by somebody who contacted our committee. Quote, at approximately 12 p.m. on December 3rd, the FBI informed HSI and JTTF that FBI field interview agents learned that Marquez and his wife, Maria Chernik, were scheduled for a meeting at the U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services Office in San Bernardino for noon on December 3rd. HSI contacted the HSI special agent requesting a team of armed agents to respond to the San Bernardino USCIS office in order to detain Marquez until an FBI interview team could be dispatched. The special agent informed the HSI team that the officer in charge of USCIS would not let HSI agents in the building. So HSI, a special team, showed up trying to potentially apprehend somebody who at that point in time thought might have been part of a terrorist plot, and the officer in charge of the USCIS office would not allow those agents in the building. The special agent learned that Marquez and Chernik did not show up for the meeting. The special agent requested copies of the A file in which USCIS refused. So it happened on December 3rd. This is kind of getting me to the cross purposes. So we had a team armed up, potentially dealing with a terrorist. They had a tip from the FBI that Mr. Marquez might be at the USCIS office, and the officer in charge of USCIS, the officers, wouldn't allow HSI into the building and wouldn't give them the A file. That's not indicating a great deal of cooperation between two different agencies under DHS, whose supposedly the top concern is security of this nation. Mr. Director Rodriguez, can you explain that? But by the way, we've been told, don't have any information, that the decision not to let HSI in came from higher up.
Yeah, that much is not correct, in the sense that once field leadership had consulted with hires up, the instruction was in fact to facilitate the actions that HSI wanted to take. Unfortunately, this was all, as these situations do, was all evolving very quickly. Ordinarily, we don't normally have situations where law enforcement comes into a USCIS office to effect an arrest.
But how can you explain that the officer in charge of USCIS wouldn't allow HSI agents in there when they're saying, listen, you could have a potential terrorist here, somebody who's involved in what just happened yesterday in the slaughter of 14 Americans, don't even allow them in the office? How could that possibly happen?
Again, Chairman, I think the point here is that we operate according to certain protocols. That individual was seeking guidance.
If it isn't perfect, make it better. And one of those is how do we move from a paper process to an electronic process?
In January, 21-year-old Sarah Root was killed in Omaha by an illegal alien named Eswin Mejia. He was street driving while drunk. This is not the first time that local police had arrested Mr. Mejia for driving drunk. And after he was arrested for the incident, he posted bail. Prior to being released from jail, however, local police contacted ICE and requested that he be detained because of his immigration status. ICE, however, refused and said that would not be consistent with the president's immigration executive actions. Mejia was released and disappeared. Do you think someone who street races while driving drunk and kills another person is a threat to public safety?
Well,
Which is what happened
criminal
here.
consequences. There'll be criminal consequences.
We don't know where the man is.
Right. And sir, I don't understand where you got the information with respect to our refusing to deal with this individual. That's not my understanding of the facts.
This is ICE's public comment. ICE has said that in response to Omaha law enforcement, who said they requested that ICE detain him.
I am ICE, and I don't recall making that statement. I would not have said that. What we did do is we look at every individual case, like we do here with Mr. Mejia, and determine whether a detainer to recommend to local law enforcement is appropriate. As you know, that's been a subject of much conversation. We are working very hard to get all local law enforcement to work with us on it, and we've made some great strides. But in this case, there is not a single injury or death that occurs at the hands of an illegal immigrant that doesn't weigh heavily on me, Senator.
I believe that. I'm going to interrupt because I'm quoting your agency here. This is my letter to you, February 29th. I'm quoting your agency's public statement. This is footnote 4 in my letter. Do you have the letter of February 29th? In November of 2014, Secretary Johnson issued a number of memos changing DHS policies on immigration, known collectively as the President's Immigration Executive Actions. One of these memos addressed changes to ICE's detention policy for illegal aliens. DHS said in that memo that it was designed to identify threats to public safety. Specifically, it says that unless an illegal alien has been charged with a serious crime, ICE will not likely detain that person. Does this policy mean that ICE does not consider someone a threat to public safety unless they've already been convicted?
With all our field office directors to specify clearly to them that there is always this category, which is kind of an umbrella category that says if this does not fit a specific case, but you as an informed, well-trained officer of Immigration and Customs Enforcement believe that that person presents a public safety threat, you are free to exercise your judgment in the manner consistent with that judgment.
But in this case, Sarah Root is dead. I mean, so what if someone kills a U.S. citizen? That doesn't meet the threshold?
That was after the fact, sir. What you're saying is, I understand that that person was injured and had not, in that 4-hour period of time, seriously injured, but had not passed away until later. Again, sir, it's easy to look back and say that judgment was poorly exercised, and as I said earlier, I intend to learn from this particular incident. I feel terrible.
Statistic, about 40% of the people in this country illegally are here on overstays. That of the best estimate, 11 to 12 million people in this country illegally, that puts the number somewhere between 4.4 and 4.8 million people here that are overstaying a visa.
I'm not sure I've seen a figure on any particular area. I really don't know.
I mean, why wouldn't we know that? The article I'm looking at, it's still today about 523,000 visa overstays per year. I mean, why wouldn't we be tracking that?
So much of what we do is risk-based. So we're looking at the whole large universe of overstays and trying to determine which one of these folks could potentially pose a danger or a public safety threat. And in the information we've got, at least I can give you this, sir, we've got about 489,579 leads that were provided to CTCU where there is a flag with respect to business and pleasure travelers, the B1, B2 visas.
I realize there are millions, tens of millions of people that come and go out of the United States. In today's information technology age, I don't understand what's so hard about keeping track of this. Everybody that comes in here legally has a passport, has a number attached, correct?
Yes.
That goes into a database. What is so hard, and then have that passport attached to a particular visa? I mean, shouldn't we just have the information on this thing? Again, I'm an accountant, so I'm kind of into numbers and I'm kind of into information, but when you take a look at what we can do in other areas of our economy, whether it's tracking numbers with the shipments, that type of thing, what has been so hard about us developing that database where we know exactly who's come in, who hasn't gone, tie it to a visa, and just know with great deal of certainty with pretty much a push of a button on a computer?
As my most recent report shows, I mean, the challenges in the federal government in building these kinds of information systems is very, very difficult. And I think there has been some effort to try to get an exit system that has not been successful. So I think as a federal government, we are aware of the problem, but we have not been able to do a solution.
Would you agree with me in the private sector this would almost be like falling off a log in
Yes.
terms of developing a database like this?
Yes.
Which begs the question, why can't we do this after 10 years in the federal government?
Of the tragic death of Iowan Sarah Root, who was killed by a drunk driver who was reportedly in the country illegally and has since posted bail and absconded. If it is the case that ICE refrained from lodging a detainer on Mejia because his arrest for felony motor vehicle homicide, quote, did not meet ICE's enforcement priorities, end quote, would you agree with me that ICE needs to take another look at its so-called enforcement policies?
Well, we do that every day. We train and we respond to evolving situations on the basis of things we've experienced and seen. So that prosecutorial discretion, as I said a little earlier, is just that. It's a person's judgment in looking at all the information in front of them as to whether or not they lodge a detainer or not. We do it on a case-by-case basis. And as I said earlier, Senator, this is a terrible instance where we will look at it and learn from that situation. But prosecutorial discretion could have been exercised a different way here. That's us looking back. I want to look forward so that we don't have that situation arise again.
Well, but the way we look forward, though, Director, is also by learning from mistakes of the past. And this is not an isolated incident by any means. And its priority should be to ensure that people who enter our country illegally and kill American citizens are deported and never allowed to return.